adalah tari Mas Furi.
Selain nader ya,
Ladies and gentlemen, our honorable guests and all the participants that have been joined in Zoom and YouTube, we announce you to be ready in your place because the webinar will shortly begin. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, selamat pagi. The Excellency, Rektor Universitas Negeri Semarang, The Excellency, Vice Rector Universitas Negeri Semarang, The Excellency, all invited speakers in this webinar, the Honorable Dean of Faculty of Education, the Honorable Dean in Universitas Negeri Semarang, the Honorable Vice Dean of Education Faculty, the Honorable Vice Dean in Universitas Negeri Semarang, the Honorable all top management in Faculty of Education, distinguished guests, and all participants. Welcome to second International Seminar on Education and Human Technology 2021. This seminar held by Faculty of Education for celebrating with core topic Beyond Global Pandemic, New Challenges and Innovation in Digital Learning. The participant in today's seminar is not only come from Faculty of Education, but also from neighbor faculty and university. On today's occasion, we are delighted to welcome to all participants and distinguished guests who are present in Faculty of Education, Zoom and YouTube, especially for the honorable speakers, the Excellency Professor Dr. Fatur Rahman M.Hum, Rektor Universitas Negeri Semarang, the Excellency Professor Sugris Heber from Lathrop University, Australia, the Excellency Dr. Paul Hopkins from University of Hull, United Kingdom, the Excellency Prof. Jian Zhonghong from Central China Normal University, China, and the Excellency Siti Nuzulia, PhD from Faculty of Education, Universitas Negeri Semarang. Ladies and gentlemen, before we start following agenda, I would like to read the following rules for the seminar that you should follow. First, all participants have to fill the attendance form by clicking the link in the chat box. Second, participant ID should written with complete name, then followed by institution name. Third, participants should turn the camera on and stay muted during the seminar unless the moderator allows them to speak up. Fourth, a certificate will be given to participants who already submit the attendance form. That is for the second IGTV rules. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the second IGTV 2021 will run with the following agenda. First is opening ceremony. Second is the keynote speakers by Rektor Universitas Negeri Semarang. Third is invited speakers presentation. Fourth, break session. Fifth is panel presentation. And the last is closing. Ladies and gentlemen, singing national anthem Indonesia Raya. Menyanyikan lagu Indonesia Raya. next opening agenda is the committee speech. Please welcome Mr. Imam Sofwan as the Chief of 2nd ICHT 2021 Committee. Mr. Imam, the time is yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everyone. First of all, I would like to greet the Honorable Rector of Universitas Negeri Semarang, Professor Dr. Fatur Rahman M. Hum, who will also be the keynote speaker in this event, and Vice Rector along with staff. Dean Faculty of Education, Dr. Edi Purwanto MSI, the first Vice Dean of Faculty of Education, Mr. Farid Ahmadi Eskom, MCom, PhD, the second Vice Dean of Faculty of Education, Dr. Sinta Saraswati, MBD, Cons, the third Vice Dean of Faculty of Education, Dr. Sungkowo Edi Mulyono, SPD, MSI, as well as the committee for this international seminar. I hope this activity will run successfully. We humbly welcome to the invited speaker, Professor Sue Griswold from La Trobe University, School of Education, Melbourne, Australia, Dr. Paul Hopkins from Hull University, UK, Professor Jin Zhong Hong from Central China Normal University, China. Welcome to the second international seminar on Education and Human Technology 2021 in Faculty of Education, Universitas Negeri Semarang, Indonesia. And also, last but not the least, Dr. Siti Nuzulia from my beloved university, Universitas Negeri Semarang. As the chairman of today's seminar, I also welcome 579 participants and speakers who are expert, industry, organization, professor, research, scholar, lecturer, teacher, and student worldwide to the second international seminar on International and Human Technology 2021, held by Faculty of Education, Universitas Negeri Semarang. The theme of today's seminar is that we are embracing the beyond global pandemic, new challenge and innovation in digital learning. Therefore, this seminar welcome you to present your latest finding, innovation, trend, consent, practical challenge, encounter, and the solution adopted in emerging science, education, and technology. The seminar consists of plenary session of the 4 initial speakers, followed by parallel session and the paper publication to the international proceeding, Scopus indexing, Journal International, National, and Book Chapter International. We have great challenges and great opportunities, and together with our great collaboration through this seminar, with this international seminar activity, we hope that we can contribute to thinking about pandemic problem and the field of education in Indonesia, also in the world. Thank you for everyone. Enjoy the seminar. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Mr. Imam Sofwan. And ladies and gentlemen, it is time to invite the Dean of Education Faculty to deliver his welcome speech and formally open the seminar. To Dr. Edi Purwanto MSI, the chance is yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, thanks for being here. Praise to be the Allah SWT for granting us the opportunity to meet in the second international seminar on education and human technology. Universitas Negeri Semarang is pleased and feel honored to be the host of this seminar. It is a great pleasure to welcome all of the speakers. The first, Professor Dr. Fatur Rahman M. Hum, as the keynote speaker in this seminar, and 4 speakers from 4 countries. The first, Professor Jian Zhong from Chungcheong National University, China. Professor Su Gris Heber from Lathrop University, Australia. Dr. Paul Hopkins from University of Hull, UK, and Dr. Siti Dr. Siti Nuzulia from Universitas Negeri Semarang, and all presenters and participants who come from around the world to this auspicious seminar. Through this seminar, we hope that we can share scientific development in facing digital challenges and innovation during the pandemic. The output of this seminar are expected to provide suggestions for policymakers, academics, and various parties in facing digital challenges and innovation during the pandemic. I do hope that everyone will get benefits from this seminar and will bring forth new perspective in distance learning. It's hoped that the knowledge from this seminar will be applied in policies and everyday teaching and learning process during the pandemic. On the behalf of Universitas Negeri Semarang, I would like to take this opportunity to thank to the organizing committee and faculty of education and everyone who have been dedicated and ensure to success this seminar. And finally, I pray to Allah Subhanahu wa Taala to bless for this conference, this seminar, with His beautiful mercies. And I wish you all the best and hope your presence in Semarang would be a memorable one. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Dr. Edi, for the welcoming speech. And ladies and gentlemen, next agenda is praying. Allow me to invite you the prayers, and the prayer will be led by Mr. Zaki Nurul Amin. To Mr. Zaki Nurul Amin, the time is yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Ladies and gentlemen, let us bow our head for a moment. Pray to God, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, so that our international conference can be precious to all of us. I will lead this prayer based on the teaching of Islam. And those who are not Muslim, you are pleased to pray according to each of your belief. A'udzu billahi minasyaitonir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Hamdan syakirin, hamdan yuafi ni'amah wa yukafi'u mazida. Ya Rabbana lakal hamdu wa lakal sukru, yambaghi li jalali wajhikal karim wa adimi sultanik. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad, salatan tunjina biha min jami'il ahwali wal afat, wa taqdilana biha jami'al hajat, wa tutahhiruna biha min jami'i sayi'at, wa tarfa'una biha indaka a'la darajat, wa tuballighuna biha aqsal ghayat min jami'il khairati fil hayati wa ba'dal mamat. Oh Allah, today in this beautiful day, we gather here to bring about an international seminar on education and human technology. The theme is Beyond Global Pandemic, New Challenges and Innovation in Digital Learning. Make this international seminar a useful science assembly as a medium of sharing useful ideas, knowledge, and experiences. May the conference we organize today benefit our lives, broaden our knowledge, shine our ideas, and lead us to be productive and useful people for others. O Allah, guide and bless our heart and our minds with the light of your guidance. Help us to speak our mind clearly. Help us to listen to each other, respect each other, love each other, so that we are included in the blessed person. Oh Allah, you are the one who can fulfill our dua. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanah wa fil akhirati hasanah wa qina adzabannar wa qina adzabannar wa qina adzabannar. Subhanaka rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Amin, amin, ya Rabbal Alamin. May we are blessed by Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. Now, it is time to invite our Rector, Universitas Negeri Semarang, to deliver a keynote speech. But before that, we will show you his curriculum vitae. Profesor Dr. Fatur Rahman M. Hum is Rector of Universitas Negeri Semarang. He has graduated from doctoral degree in linguistics, Universitas Gadjah Mada, Indonesia. He has many publications. The latest one, he writes about conservation text as an Indonesian course teaching material. The other ones, teachers and practitioner assessment on the learning set of characters containing storytelling models using stimulus response based cooperative method. That is the curriculum vitae of Professor Dr. Fatur Rahman M. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Professor Dr. Fatur Rahman M. Hum.
Thank you. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Selamat pagi, semangat pagi. Semoga berkah dalam menjalankan amanah. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala for His blessing and mercy that we could assemble in this second international seminar on education and human technology 2021. The Honorable, the Dean of Education Faculty, and all of the committee, the Honorable speakers, Professor Jian Song Hong from CCNU China, the Honorable Professor Stu Green Saber, Latrobe University, Australia, the Honorable Dr. Paul Hopkins from University of Hull, UK, the Honorable Dr. Siti Nuzulia from UNnes, Indonesia, the moderator and all of the participants of this seminar. And all of these distinguished guests, students, and lecturers from the UNES and all of the participants for the members of the International Seminar on Education and Human Technology, or ISAT 2021. 21. Thank you for your appreciation for UNES, that UNES have the vision, conservation university with international reputation. In the field of the capacity of UNES, we have spirit of knowledge which develop civilization. The tradition of achievement in UNES is the green campus that have achievement in 6 national. And then we have the international certification for the program study. And then we have soft corpus publication. Then we have for ASU rank in 10 national and have stars in rating system E-star. UNES get best values of budget work from the Minister of Education in 2020. And UNES have the predicat as a corruption-free area campus and clean and serving parasitic area integrity zones. And UNES have the recognition for the student role of input in the student of Indonesia have the second rank in Indonesia, the most number of SNPTM. 2021 student acceptance reached 2,755 students. And then in the PIMNAS, let's get the 10th PIMNAS in 2020. This is a milestone of UNES, and beyond global pandemic, new challenge and innovation in digital learning, I think that the theme was chosen of Faculty of Education is a faculty which overshadow the field of education, and it is expected to be an innovation center, mainly the learning innovation during the COVID-19 pandemic. Ladies and gentlemen, the theme of this Natalis UNES, Gemilang untuk Indonesia Maju, one of the implementation in education will in releasing UNES as science university for advanced Indonesia. Criminal challenges during pandemic, the preparation of the committee is lack of face-to-face meeting, verified information technology, and new ways of living the old habits, and expectation of the seminar. This seminar we can use to sharing developments of science one another in facing the challenges and digital innovation during the pandemic. The output of this seminar can be used as suggestions for the stakeholders, academics, and various parties in facing the challenges and innovation during the pandemic. This is the direction of research development and the community service. The creator of UNES, we have the keys of success: togetherness, integrity, and reality performance. And finally, we give the quotes that the healthy academic atmosphere is built through academic person who has commitment in three things which are linked each other and mutually reinforcing, namely togetherness, integrity, and real works. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much, Professor Dr. Fatur Rahman M. Hum, Rector of Universitas Negeri Semarang, who has delivered a keynote speech. Thank you, Professor. And ladies and gentlemen, now we move to the core agenda, invited speaker presentation. The first session will lead by our moderator, Mr. Novis Tiasto, SPD MPD. But before that, I would like to read the curriculum vitae of Mr. Novis Tiasto. Mr. Novis Tiasto, SPD MPD, is a lecturer in Elementary School Education Department. His focus study is about learning strategy and multicultural education. His recent publication, with title The Development of Social Studies Learning Tools Using Cooperative Model, Type T, shared with video media for elementary schools in 5th grade. And the other publication about the implementation of learning tools using TPS models with video media to enhance students' characters, activities, and learning outcomes of social studies in elementary school. You can contact him in email by novistiasto@mail.unnes.ac.id. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Novis Tiasto.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tiasto, Novis Tiasto, and I have a great honor to be the moderator in this seminar today. Ladies and gentlemen, in this very special occasion, I would like to introduce the first speaker to you. Her name is Prof. Sue Griseber from La Trobe University, Australia. And this is the video of her curriculum vitae.
Sue Griseber is Professor of Early Childhood Education and Associate Head of Research in School of Education. Her research interests are informed by a range of critical, feminist, and feminist post-structural theories that address social justice and equity, and include early childhood curriculum, policy, pedagogies, and families, women in higher education, and qualitative and post-qualitative research approaches. Sue is foundation co-editor of the internationally known journal Contemporary Issues in Early Childhood. She has many publications. One of them, she writes book chapters about the politicization of professional development in Australian early childhood education. That is the curriculum vitae of Professor Sue Griseber, PhD.
Okay, what amazing speaker we have now. And ladies and gentlemen, in this international conference, Prof. Sue is going to present a topic entitled Technologies During the Pandemic with Children and Families for about 30 minutes. But before she starts, I would like to inform participants could ask questions to her by typing it on the chat box. And please don't forget to mention your name and your institution. Diinformasikan kepada peserta, ya, baik yang di Zoom maupun secara langsung, Yang ingin bertanya dapat menuliskan pertanyaan pada kolom chat dengan menyertakan nama dan asal institusi. Now, please welcome Prof. Sue Graceber from La Trobe University, Australia. Prof. Sue, would you please?
Selamat pagi. Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for this invitation to present at this conference. I am honored to be part of it, and it's been very good to see some of my friends from Semarang in the preparation for this presentation. So the title of my talk today is Technologies During the Pandemic with Children and Families. And I'm thinking about children and families because I'm an early childhood educator, and most of my work is in early childhood education. So first I'll talk a little bit about the background and context to some of the experiences that people have had internationally with the pandemic. Then I'll talk about some educational challenges that have been experienced because of the pandemic. I'll give some Australian examples, and then I will make some conclusions. And hopefully all that will happen in about 30 minutes. So there have been many effects that we have experienced due to the pandemic. So since March 2020, almost 90% of the world's countries have closed their schools in an effort to slow the transmission of COVID-19. And that's affected the education of 1.5 billion school-aged children. That's a lot of children. In addition to that, 40 million children worldwide have missed out on early childhood education in their critical preschool year as COVID-19 shut down childcare and early education facilities. So many school-aged children and children in the before school context have experienced difficulties with their education because of COVID. My slide is not moving. One moment. So some people have talked about the challenges from the pandemic as being the biggest educational technology experiment ever. For example, 1.5 billion students being out of school and hundreds of millions of children trying to learn solely online. People have said that this experiment will shape schools, the idea of education, and what learning looks like in the 21st century. One of the effects has been related to income and access to technology. So parents in high-income countries can rely on schooling and entertainment of their children, which isn't as widely available in other contexts. For example, women on low incomes who lack access to technology spend much more time than their high-income counterparts on homeschooling, simply because they often don't have access to the technologies that are required. But not all young people and families are well connected digitally, even in high-income countries like Australia and the US. A wide range of access exists, as well as the ability to navigate and use the internet and other digital technologies. So just because you've got access, that doesn't mean to say that you can use the digital technologies. But where there's no access, skills are likely to be less well developed for children and their families. And girls' education has been affected, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa, where remote learning is being facilitated virtually. Existing gender norms around access to technology have disadvantaged girls even further. Thinking about remote learning in low and middle income countries, such as Asia, Africa, and the Americas, people in those countries have tended to adopt SMS and phone calls and other accessible, affordable, and low technology methods of information delivery, including television. That's to help engage and support parents in supervising children's remote learning opportunities. So it's been a big change for many, many families and many, many children. But computer access in homes has been difficult, including in high-income countries like Australia. So if you were living in Melbourne, my city at the moment, and you were a family of 5, 2 adults and 3 children, and both the adults were working from home and the 3 children were doing schooling at home, that would require probably 5 computers. Now, not many families have access to that many computers, even in high income and relatively well-off families in Australia. So computer access for working at home and computer access for learning, school learning at home can be challenging in all circumstances. This data from the OECD PISA data in 2018 shows some of the European countries and the access that the 15-year-old students who took part in PISA had. So in countries like Austria, Denmark, Iceland, students, more than 95% of students had access to computers at home to do their schoolwork. But that was pre-COVID when this PISA data was gathered. So we're not sure about the access when whole families might be required to work from home and more than one 15-year-old student. In Indonesia, the access to computers for students to work at home in the PISA data collected for the 2018 results was 34%. But we do know that smartphone ownership in Indonesia is extremely high. So students may have contact through smartphones. In the US, virtually all students aged 15 from privileged backgrounds had access to a computer for their schoolwork, again before COVID. But about 25% of students from disadvantaged backgrounds did not. So the sorts of things that happened for remote learning, school learning in high-income countries were things like teaching occurred using video conferencing. Children and students used Padlets, which is a virtual post-it note system where students are able to share ideas. They also used things like Flipgrid, where teachers and students can create videos to share. Using videos, students were able, and Zoom, for example, students were able to do individual work, group work, and discuss with their teachers when they needed to. Preschool students used smartphones and tablets to show their teachers and their peers the work that they had done at home. They also took their peers on tours of their gardens or inside their bedrooms to show their teachers and their peers the sorts of things that they were doing at home and the preschool work that they had done at home. However, there were places in my city of Melbourne where students did not have access to the internet and they didn't have access to computers or smartphones or tablets. So in those cases, hard copies were prepared for students and they were collected from their school or their preschool, and the students took the hard copies home, worked on them at home, and then returned the completed work to school for their teachers to see. Continuing this, teachers were using things like Zoom or Microsoft Teams. So one of the advantages of using Microsoft Teams is that teachers can see students as they write, enabling them to give real-time feedback while students are writing. That means teachers can provide individual support privately without the distractions of a noisy classroom or without possibly embarrassing students who might be struggling with an idea or a concept. Teachers also used flipped classrooms where students learn basic skills and knowledge at home with videos or platforms, and then they join other schoolmates to do work together online. And interestingly, one school in Hong Kong hosted a virtual sports day as part of their online remote learning. I think the sports day lasted for 2 or 3 hours. It wasn't a whole school day. Now I'm turning to a survey conducted by the Australian Institute of Family Studies, which occurred during COVID. So there were just over 7,000 participants from all around Australia, and it wanted to understand how families coped with the pandemic. There was a skewing in the number of respondents in terms of 81% of them being female. They were fairly well educated, but they did represent families with and without children and a range of ages. So the survey was looking at how families adjusted to the pandemic and the severe restrictions that were in place, particularly in places like Melbourne. Melbourne had a lockdown for 112 days straight, 112 days, which means that you couldn't go further than 5 kilometres from your house, except if you were an essential worker. So there were other things that the survey looked at, including the economic and social impacts and the effects on physical and mental health. So some of the key findings from working at home related to childcare included that the proportion of people working from home increased significantly. So before COVID, 7% of people worked at home, but during COVID, 60% did. Families who were using parent-only care doubled from 30% to more than 64%. Families who were using approved childcare dropped from 52% to 26%. And families who were using grandparents or other informal care dropped significantly as well. So grandparents who were providing care weekly, most stopped and were unable to continue to provide care. So there were significant changes in people working from home and the jobs that they were doing at home. So on the left of the screen is a quote from one participant who said, "Working from home and homeschooling 2 children has been a huge burden, very difficult for us all. I struggle to complete activities set by the school while working, and I feel guilty and worried that my children aren't keeping up." So that mother lived in a major city and she lived with 2 children, and she was supposed to be doing her own work from home at the same time as homeschooling her 2 children. So 40% of parents who worked from home indicated that they were always or often actively caring for their children while they were supposed to be working. And there are other details there that you can see as well. So with this word map, this is a compilation of the sorts of things that families and children missed the most. So they missed their friends a lot. They missed their families. They missed eating and having meals together. They missed sports. They missed visiting. And they missed other things as well, like movies and traveling, coffee, going to the cafe. Those sorts of everyday things that people weren't able to do were missed. So now I'm going to turn to a smaller study, which was conducted by the Alana and Madeline Foundation, and that looked at the changing aspects of technologies and how Australian families adapted to those sorts of things. So there were 21 families in this study, 39 adults and 44 children. It ranged from single parent families to two people families to more than 6 people in a household, and that involved children. There were 450 responses, and they included written texts, audio recordings, photos, videos, memes, GIFs, and PowerPoints. So the study was investigating how families were using digital technology differently as a result of social isolation. Here are some of the findings. There were 3 themes. One was about connection, so families connected through digital technologies. Families were using technology in all aspects of life, so it was ubiquitous. And families were very aware of the benefits and the impact of technologies. They understood the benefits and they understood the impact of technologies. So they preferred to use technologies to connect with each other, to connect with their communities, and to connect with services. They understood that things like scrolling through pages for lots of time was not necessarily useful. They valued the connection to their household members, their peers, and their extended families, but they also valued using different devices in the same space, as you can see in this photo. Television was commonly used as a way of routine family bonding, where families talked about what they were watching. And video calling and family group chats were widely used to connect with extended families, especially grandparents. And in Australia, because over a quarter of the population are born outside of Australia, extended families were connected a lot with video calling internationally. So the ubiquity was that the technologies were a daily part of family life, and they were used to maintain and consolidate relationships. They were used to learn in informal and formal ways, such as for school learning, but also for dance classes. They were used to support health and well-being. So people were doing meditation while they were on a Zoom, or they were getting recipes from the internet. Technologies were used to play and have fun together as a family for their entertainment, and they were also used as a way of relaxing. So families did understand the benefits and the impact of technologies. Most were interested in the impacts on relationships and child development, rather than worrying about the amount of time spent using the technologies. They were informed because they could describe and explain the benefits and the tensions of using technologies. They were able to explain and show that achieving a balance is a constant challenge and not achievable in a way they would like. So they were trying to get a balance of the amount of using technologies, or the balance of using technologies and just doing things with the families in the home without the technologies. In addition to that, they could see beyond a good-bad dichotomy. So no one was saying technology is bad and no technology is good. It was more complex than that, and no one talked about it like that. So this was one participant who said, I won't forget watching Lucy, her daughter, share her Lego creations with her best friend on Zoom, or teaching my parents how to use Zoom with us and my siblings and their kids. It was incredibly powerful how honest and kind my friends were with each other when we communicated incessantly on Messenger and WhatsApp, when people are usually a bit more guarded, because in a sense we were in a crisis, especially the people who were trying to work and also homeschool. And then she said, we even went to a trivia night on Zoom and a 40th birthday via Zoom with people in London and all over Australia. That felt like a moment in history. I think it feels freeing. So just some concluding comments. Many students and teachers couldn't wait to get back to school for the social interaction. They really missed seeing their friends and their teachers. We know that not all parents have the skills to help their children move to online learning, and we know that not all families have the resources necessary for online learning. The pandemic has exposed how educational technology has failed to do what would be most powerful, according to Andreas Schleicher from the OECD. He said, what would have been most powerful was to leverage the relationship between teachers and learners, to make that stronger, to make that a more powerful relationship. But he thinks that that didn't happen. We know that teachers shared much more information than usual about what works and what doesn't work when they're teaching online than they normally would in classrooms. And we also know that many organisations, such as the OECD, advocated increased access to open, free, online educational resources and digital learning platforms for students and teachers. And as part of that, if that happens, and hopefully it will, teachers need access to training and support to be successful in those areas. So thank you very much. There are my references. And I do thank you again for this invitation to present at this conference. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Prof. Su. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the presentation from Prof. Su with the topic technologies during the pandemic with children and families. Now, let's continue to session question and answer. Before you ask questions or give comments, please click raise hand icon. Mention your name and your institution. For this session, I'd like to give it to two people, one from live Zoom and another one from the question from type box. Okay, committee, could you please? Okay, there is one. Mr. Holik, Holik, would you please ask your question directly to Prof. Su? And could you please help Mr. Holik to unmute the speaker, the committee? Holik. There is one. Could you please help him to unmute his mic? Holik. Holik. There is one who has already raised his hand through emotion. Mr. Holik, could you hear my voice?
Yes, clearly.
Okay. Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the that has been given to me. My name is Holik.
Okay, could you, excuse me, Mr.
Yeah.
Holik, could you please speak louder so we can hear your voice clearly?
Okay, sorry. Is it louder?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the chance, committee, and also the moderator of this seminar. Dear Prof. Yu, thank you for giving us clear explanation. My question will be focused on two topics. First is that what would actually the action that can be taken for us as teacher, because we see that there is a huge gap between the children who can access to learning process using technology, and also the children who cannot access. We are limited in the terms of the facilities and also the connection and so on and so forth. And the second question will be, what are the solutions that can be offered when we see that there are limitations to the children because you know that they're growing, they're fulfilling their developmental task. The focus question will be on their social aspect. What is the solution to help the children foster their social development aspects? Thank you.
Okay, Prof. Su, could you get the question?
Thank you for your question, Mr. Holik. I understood the first question, but I think I missed parts of the second question, so I will come to that in a moment. The yes.
Would the second question?
Yes.
Or will you directly answer the first one?
I will answer the first question first, and then I will go to the second question.
Okay. Okay.
So access to digital technologies is a problem for many countries, not just Indonesia. So Australia would be regarded as a high-income country, but we have many families who have limited or no access to the internet and might have a mobile phone as their contact with the world. So in many ways, we face similar access issues. So the example that I talked about, where there are schools, there are children who attend schools who do not have access to technology at home, so they weren't able to learn at home. So I'm giving you some real examples of how that was dealt with in Australia in more than one part of the country. The teachers prepared the work, they photocopied it, they prepared packs for the children, they put them in packages, and the children came and collected the hard copies from the school. They couldn't actually give them to them. They had to put them in a special place. The children came and they talked to the children from a distance, but they couldn't have close contact. The children and the families picked up their pack that had been photocopied. They went back to their homes and they worked on the hard copies. And when they were completed, they brought them back to the school. So the school still had to pay for the photocopying, and that was preschool children as well as primary school children that affected. And schools in low-income areas and schools in remote areas of Australia were particularly challenged because of the access difficulties. So there are families and children in Australia who would be experiencing exactly what you are talking about, the lack of access to technologies. So that's a problem throughout the world. I think it is unevenly spread, but we face it too. The second question?
Okay, thank you. Mr. Holik, hopefully it has already answered your question. And the next question is from Mr. Budiono from Indonesia. And he said that Indonesia computer access for school are only more or less 34%. And does Prof. Shu or could Prof. Shu suggest the learning strategy or methods that can improve learning performance in Indonesia? Anything that you can suggest by the limitation access of technology, computer in Indonesia?
Thank you for the question. I might just clarify again that 34% came from the PISA data that was published in 2018. which was before the pandemic. So it was about students aged 15 having access to computers to do schoolwork at home. So I think circumstances in Indonesia are quite different because of the high percentage of smartphone ownership in Indonesia. I think a lot of people probably have access to the internet through their smartphones rather than computers in Indonesia. So that question, which came from the PISA data, was very specific about students having access to a computer at home to do schoolwork. They may have access to smartphones to do schoolwork when they're not at school. So I think it's important to clarify that. The limitations, I really couldn't speak for the Indonesian education system as a whole. I think you have experts in your country who know much more about your education system than I do, but I'm guessing that there are ideas that are applicable across many countries in the world who are facing the same limitations. So there were only a few schools that I know of in Australia who were able to use video conferencing for teaching. A lot of schools used Zoom or Microsoft Teams, and I think they were much more accessible to our schools in Australia than the type of video conferencing that some private schools might have access to. So most of the schools here, again, used Microsoft Teams or they used Zoom. The limitations, I think there are lots of things we can learn from the limitations that we've experienced during COVID, and some of the things I think we need to turn them around and not to think of them as limitations, but as ways to further the learning that we might not have been able to do beforehand. And that means, I think, being creative and coming up with ideas about different ways of using approaches to learning. So one of the photos showed a class sitting under a bridge, learning from a teacher instructing. There are lots of ways that learning has happened, even during COVID, without technology, and that was one example, and that example came from India. So I do think that there are things that can be done. There were a couple of students in that class under the bridge who were sitting, who had face masks on, and so even though they were socially distanced, they still were taking precautions. So I think we need to be creative and come up with some ideas about that are going to work for our local situations, in our local communities and our cities. So I'm sorry, I don't have the answer for you, and I'm sure you've got many informed people in Indonesia, and particularly in Semarang and the surrounding areas, who have great ideas about that.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Su. Actually, the key thing is the bottom line. The teacher should be creative, and also the family, and also the children as well. And this is the reason that I could get from Prof. Su's presentation. COVID-19 has affected worldwide, and it has changed a lot of how the way children interact with their friends, teachers, and parents, especially in teaching and learning. As a consequence, the more aware of the use of technology teachers, children, and parents are, and the better the facilities and access government gives, the more likely education will be effective during pandemic. And ladies and gentlemen, we have already finished the session question and answer for the first keynote speaker. But before we continue to the second keynote speaker, let's give a big applause to Prof. Su. Thank you. Okay, now, thank you, Mr. Professor. Now it's time for another great keynote speaker from University of Hull, United Kingdom, UK, and his name is Dr. Paul Hopkins, and this is the curriculum vitae of him.
Dr. Paul Hopkins is a lecturer in Faculty of Arts, Culture and Education, University of Hull, United Kingdom. He is researcher in technology and health education. He is the program leader for primary SCITT, leader for primary science, and also masters in pedagogy and practice. He has published many publications. He wrote international book chapter with titles Barriers and Challenges Facing Preservist Teachers, Use of Mobile Technologies for Teaching and Learning. Then his recent articles with title Do Tablet Cure the Pedagogy Headache? And the title with Barriers and Challenges Facing Preservist Teacher, Use of Mobile Technologies for Teaching and Learning. That is the curriculum vitae of Dr. Paul Hopkins.
Okay, what a great speaker we have now. His expertise is in technology-enhanced education. Ladies and gentlemen, in this very special occasion, Mr. Hopkins will present a topic entitled Reflection on Curriculum Post-COVID for about 30 minutes. But, as I said before, I would inform to all participants who want to ask question, you can type the question on the chat box. Diinformasikan kepada peserta yang ingin bertanya dapat menuliskan pertanyaan pada kolom chat dengan menyatakan nama dan asal institusi. And now, please welcome Dr. Hopkins from University of Hull, UK. Dr. Hopkins, the time is yours.
Good morning, or very good morning from England. So I hope you can hear me. I think probably the most common question now in technology learning during COVID has been, can you hear me? So I hope you can. Welcome, if you do not know where the city of Hull is in the United Kingdom, a little map here, as you can see. And I will hesitate to pronounce the Indonesian in case I make terrible mistakes. I'm going to talk briefly, hopefully for about 25-30 minutes, around these areas. And thank you very much, Sue, for setting the scene at the existing place where we are at, hopefully coming out soon of the pandemic crisis. But keeping in mind that this may be not the last time that we have to use and think about learning in this way. And so I'm going to talk around these areas, around a little bit of background in terms of thinking about learning and the models that we've been developing, thinking about our curriculum into the future, about how that blends together in terms of different kinds of learning, about how we think about Bildung, a German word, thinking about the education and particularly on the focus for our students, a tiny bit about how we might need to think about assessment as we change and think about our futures, the barriers that will stop us forging ahead into possibly a new normal rather than snapping back to the existing ways, and then finally talking about a balanced curriculum. So whilst I'm going to focus on some of the work we've been looking at in higher education in terms of developing a curriculum for university students, I think much of this will also, I hope, be reflective for schools and school students as well, although of course there will be differences. So I'm just going to very briefly mention some of the pedagogic models. And I think this is important because we have a way of thinking about learning which is very much focused on a face-to-face, a physical space learning. And what the pandemic time has shown us is that there are different models and a need, I think, now for different models and ways of thinking. I have, in my background, been privileged to work for the Open University in the United Kingdom, which is a distance learning university, as I know many countries around the world also have. And there are lessons drawn from those institutions which I think are very valuable. So these are some of the digital models or pedagogic models we've been reflecting upon as we look forward to 21, 22 and onwards. When, as I say, we expect to go back in many ways to a old situation, a normal situation, but we want to learn very much what we can take forward into this future, which I will focus on in a little while. So the first model here from the Joint Information Systems Committee in England talks very much about the mix of things that we need as we develop a more digital or blended curriculum. So the idea about information, data and media literacy, the ability to use information online, about how we create digital artifacts, so different, again, ways of learning. Much of the learning around schooling and universities for a long time has been mediated on putting text onto paper. Now that may have changed in recent years to putting pixels onto Word documents on a screen, but the core basic philosophy is still about writing. And that's not true in all disciplines, of course, but I think there's been a significant possibility for change, particularly when you think of how young people themselves are creating digital artifacts of achievement. That hasn't really been recognized by the schooling systems, either in elementary school, in high school, or in higher education. The nature of communication and collaboration, as we're doing now. In so many ways, I would love to be in Indonesia with you, but the opportunity to be able to bridge space is really a revolutionary thing which has become much more mainstream, as Sue was saying. And then we've also been looking, particularly in my own faculty, around the training of teachers, about how the conflux comes between the digital learner and the digital teacher. So we know that many of our faculty staff have had to become digital teachers in the last few months, and that's been a big challenge. But also, we've all had to become digital learners at the same time. And we're looking at the overlap of those things. We've also been drawing on a number of other models of digital learning or digital pedagogy that underpin these. Things like Madinich and Klein's model in terms of teacher confidence, on Budentera's model around the SAMA model, as it's called, moving from a substitution of technology to a more revolutionary or redefinition of learning through technology. On the gradual release model, where we look at teacher responsibility and student responsibility for learning and what the balance of those is and whether that needs to change. Around Misha and Kohler's TPAC model, the interface between technology, pedagogy and content. And then finally, the idea of design and educational technology, how we look at the ways in which we're constructing and designing learning. And then we've also been considering, again, as Sue touched upon, the complications of how you access information or how students access information. And this is Stanford's model, which looks at the question around connectivity. In some ways, I do believe that connectivity is an even more urgent issue than technology. Again, as Sue touched on, and there are a lot of information around digital reporting, that particularly smartphone access around the world, so the physical technology, is really very high and growing. Around most of the world, the vast majority of adults and significant majorities of high school students have access to technology, and even growing numbers of elementary or middle school students. Now, whilst those aren't always smartphones, they are more and more in that region, particularly as the advent of the cheaper smartphone has come more prevalently. However, access to bandwidth, either through mobile data or through wireless data or through wired connections, is an ongoing concern. And you can see in Stanford's model here how low immediacy, e.g. not having access to information in live space as we're doing now, and high bandwidth, or rather low bandwidth access becomes the easiest. So the green quadrant of this graph gives us those areas which are the lowest requirements in terms of technology. In the opposite corner, in the red, we have the highest demands. So already, as we've seen today, with some technical problems, this is where there can be complications if we're trying to do things like video and audio conferencing. So really we need to consider, as we're designing curriculums for the future, how we sit more in the green and yellow quadrants of this rather than necessarily the red quadrant. I think also a very important factor to keep in mind is the difference between how the relationships between student agency and teacher agency have changed and developed during this time. An interesting question came up in the chat after Sue's session around how do you keep students engaged? And that's very much, I think, a change in the focus we need to think about student agency and the skills we need to be teaching both our elementary and high school students, but especially our university students, in terms of taking more control of their own learning. Again, something I'll come back to in a while. And a very important focus on student well-being. Isolation during the pandemic time has really struck and thrown up a lot of issues around mental health and around student well-being. And if we are going to continue utilizing these mobile technologies and distance technologies to think about remote and distance learning as part of our offering, we need to keep that very much in mind. So as we're designing curriculums, I think there are a number of areas that we need to consider, again, which I'll come back to in more detail in just a few minutes. The first of these are asking the question about where learning takes place. Traditionally, learning has taken place inside the institution. Now we're starting to see, again, as Sue gave some lovely examples, of how space has changed and learning takes place at the home or at other places. And I think, again, that will be an opportunity for future development and growth. Secondly, is in how we construct curriculums. Traditionally, again, we've had quite large amounts of curriculum learning, which take place either in trimesters or semesters in universities or in terms within schools. And perhaps we need to think more about a bite-sized model of chunks of curriculum, so small amounts of curriculum as we design future curricula. Then the pathways of learning, rather than there being the same pathway of learning for all students, the opportunity for multimodal or multi-directional pathways for students. And finally, the kind of resources that we as teachers and faculty members need to design for our students. Again, traditionally the idea of books, whether those are physical or electronic books, moving more now to a much more multimedia construction in learning. I'm just going to share again some survey data from my own university. We asked the students in terms of using the technologies during the lockdown periods. And again, the lockdown in the United Kingdom has been on and off, but has been mostly in place now for almost a year. What kind of technologies they have enjoyed using or liked using, and what the benefits were. And I'll just run through a little bit of this data quickly. These are from my own university students rather than from school students. So you can see that access has mostly been through fixed computers, desktop and tablets, although I think there is advantages and opportunities for smartphone usage, but we do have to be aware of what things we're demanding in terms of the technology we're seeing students use. Most of my students at university have their own device, although we know that's not true for school students, again, as Sue highlighted from some of the international data. We know that they have access to shared documents and they're getting more and more familiar. And I think, as Mark Prensky said, we have now a generation of digital natives right the way through to people in their 20s and even possible 30s who've grown up with technological use. And it's important for those of us who are beyond 30 to remember this. And then we looked a little bit at the skills they have and the access to skills, and you can see some of that there. We asked them about internet robustness, again, back to that idea of data communication. And we found that this was the most serious issue we had in students connecting to learning online. So only 10% of our students said they never had any problems with internet connection. I'm conscious myself in a home, not quite of 3 children, but of 2 adults and 2 children, but with fast internet connection and many computers in my household. This is a peculiarity and not normative for most of the students, even in developed countries, let alone countries where access is not quite so easy. And again, you can see in terms of the tool usage around the virtual learning environments and the technologies that Sue mentioned for conferencing, Zoom and Teams, there is a mixed response in how successful this was. We asked students about their attitudes to different kinds of learning. And again, you can see here that these are quite positive towards the more delayed technologies like recorded lectures, quite positive towards live lectures and live seminars and tutorials. Again, I think these are important to look at things to take forward in terms of what students find attractive. When we asked them about what they liked about remote learning, then they were very positive that they could do this from home, that learning in a different space was a very positive attitude for most of the students. We also found they really liked not having to travel into the university. So time was considered to be wasted on commuting. For many of our students, that can be as much as an hour or 2 hours each day, and they found that was a much more productive use of time. That it helped with childcare for those students who had children, more mature students, and their time management. But a very interesting one was they liked the idea of able to revisit sessions. How often I think many of us might have been in the situation when it would have been good to be able to pause the lecturer, or even more importantly, to rewind the lecturer or the teacher. And that opportunity, my university students found very beneficial. We asked them also what they found negative about working remotely. And you can see that many of these are social in the sense of no set routine, not coming in the institution into a social space and not meeting fellow students. That was the most negative that students commented on. But also problems with accessing resources in terms of the digital technologies. I think one of the questions that we're asking is how do we treat our students, and what's the relationship between the lecturer in the university or the teacher in the school and the student? And this comes back to this idea about student agency. So I think in many ways in the university, we've been realizing that we've been treating our children, our students, very much as children, a pedagogic approach to learning. And we're considering now how we can move that to a more andragogic approach to learning, where we empower students to have more agency and take control of their own learning. Ultimately, perhaps we might come to a hertagogic approach to learning, where students are more managing and constructing their own learning experiences through the artifacts of learning that the university or school could provide. So what opportunities do we think there are in this new normal going forward after the pandemic and the opportunities to go back to the old normal come about? The first of these in the opportunity for personalization or bespoke learning. Since students can have control and access to recorded lectures, to resources, to other opportunities, there is the possibility for students to construct more of their own learning pathways. And this allows them perhaps to develop courses which are more bespoke to their own needs. This has potential benefits for student engagement and student opportunity. We think there are opportunities of flexibility in terms of time and place, and we're looking at the opportunity not just of keeping on with recorded lectures and live lectures, but the idea of dual streaming, where some students may be in the university and some students in other places, and we're streaming that at the same time, in the same way as that we're now streaming this presentation and this conference. But there's the opportunity for people to be in multiple spaces, and also to have access to materials at multiple times. So again, the opportunity for lectures, for seminars, for lessons in schools, perhaps to be constructed out of the 9 to 5 or 9 to 3 space that education normally takes place in. So evening lectures, weekend lectures, other opportunities become more possible and flexible. The opportunity to beam in or to bring in visitors and to collaborate in different spaces. Again, as I am doing now, as I mentioned, it would be lovely to be in Indonesia, but the opportunity to be able to beam into a conference for a few hours or for one day, as opposed to the difficulties in travel and time for visitors. So the opportunity to bring in experts, collaborators, and other speakers for short amounts of time, or the opportunity for one speaker to appear in multiple places at the same time using the technologies. I mentioned this as being very popular among our students, but the opportunity to revisit or to revise in learning. If you don't know it, the Khan Academy has had great success in the teaching of particularly STEM subjects. And a lot of this has been with very simple video technologies, but the opportunity to pause, rewind, and replay. Sue again mentioned the idea of flipped learning, and Eric Mazur's work, which developed this at MIT, very much picked on this idea of students being able to stop and pause and rewind. So students again have opportunities to learn at their own pace rather than the pace of the teacher. There are opportunities for the development of digital skills and competencies, which I think going forward into the future will become more and more relevant for our students to build up these digital skill and competencies. Inside Europe, there's a framework called DigiSkills or DigiComp, which is now in its third iteration, and there are similar things I know worldwide. And finally, this is one particularly for vocational students, where we're finding those of us who have to observe vocational students have the opportunity to do that remotely through live streaming, as we're doing now, through recorded streaming, and through dialogic approaches post vocational opportunities. So again, we see that as a real opportunity in vocational areas where students can utilize these technologies to be in contact with their mentors and tutors, but not physically. We're also starting to explore the opportunities of viewing that in virtual reality, so a more holistic or immersive experience. We're also looking at this idea about assessment and digital badging. So a movement away from a universal assessment system for all students to a more portfolio approach to the building up of assessments. And again, in terms of engagement, rather than students building up a single assessment modality, students be able to construct multiple elements to build a portfolio of achievement, to demonstrate what they can do to their own teachers in a much more fluid and constructive way. And as part of this, we're exploring further the idea of digital badging. So micro courses either taken inside the university or accessed for the very many courses now that are available online and the growing number of courses online that students can take. And this could be in a whole variety of areas. So for my own students in higher education and for research students, this could be around research methodologies and techniques, where they could take small micro courses in data analysis or in methodology or in instrumental techniques, and to build up a portfolio of badges. We're also looking at the opportunities that for our teacher education students in taking micro courses in areas like sign language or a second or third language or a sports qualification that will develop a much more bespoke portfolio or curriculum vitae of experiences. That's all I hope very positive, but let's look briefly at some of the things that are going to stand in the way of this vision of a new future or this hope for a new future. The first, of course, is time. We know during this last 12 months, certainly for myself and many of my colleagues, and I'm sure for all of us working in education, that the time to prepare these new materials is considerable and difficult. And so I think faculty leaders and school managements will have to consider seriously the time it takes to prepare high quality digital resources. Secondly, the skills of both the faculty and students, or of teachers and children in schools, in order to access and develop both access to these tools, but also the creation of digital artifacts. So if we're asking students to make video, to make audio, to make animation, then there are skills that are involved in doing this. There are, of course, considerable costs in reversioning. Whilst there may be saving in costs, the investment in technology, in the hard plant, the investment in data transfer, in data streaming, and the investment in staff skills. Again, Sue mentioned the access to technologies, and whilst I think smart devices are certainly a significant way forward on this, again, we've had a big push in the United Kingdom, and I know in other countries, to get devices out to students. And again, this I think will have to be a priority. And of course, the ongoing and renewal costs of that. Perhaps though some of the biggest changes, and the work of Michael Fullen here I think is very important.
Mr. Hopkins, you still have 5 minutes left.
Thank you. I think I'm on time. Thank you. Are the attitudes to change. So there needs to be an attitudinal change that digital learning or blended learning is a positive way forward, and that we don't just go back to this old normal. And that also will impact on the ways we think about education and learning in a whole variety of different ways. This is perhaps the most difficult change of all. So what might this mean? I think We don't want to, certainly, at least I believe very strongly, we don't want to snap back to the old normal, but also we don't want to just jettison. It's not just moving on to a world that's entirely online. I think most countries around the world, most children around the world, most teachers around the world have found this online experience really quite stressful. So I think there needs to be a blend between looking at how we use the physical space of our teaching institutions and how we access and utilize virtual space. A blend between live delivery and recorded delivery and what options they may offer to us. And a blend between the planned content delivered by teachers and institutions and student choice and agency, how students themselves take control of their own learning and build up portfolios of learning. We're looking at this in my university and developing a mix now of a virtual and face-to-face university as we go forward. And here's just one course that's looking at development of that in 21-22. And again, that mix of fixed units of learning controlled by the university or by the institution and opportunities for self-directed learning. Again, that blend and mix as we go forward. So what conclusions would I like to draw and offer some thinking points for you as we move forward? I think the first thing to offer is this caution that whilst people like myself, who are digital evangelists, want to take things into a new direction, underpinning all of this is student well-being. And reflections from my own students here is that a quarter of the students found the online lockdown learning very stressful. So we have to take that into mind. And in fact, almost half of them found this to some degree with a significant amount of stress. However, I think the solutions are not, as much of the learning has been done during lockdown, to bolt new technologies onto old ways of thinking. We have to also change our ways of thinking. I mentioned this idea of digital learners and digital teachers, and you can see here from data from a survey in the UK about different ways of using technology in the future. So I think there is some appetite for change. So I would offer these 4 thinking points. We were forced into the change due to the pandemic, but we need to reflect on what's been better and what we want to keep. We need to have wide consultation with teachers, with faculty, with students and children, and also administration and support staff. And this needs to be a journey that we take together and take reasonably slowly. We need to accept the fact that there will be those who prefer these new ways of working and to take their own needs into consideration. We found in the United Kingdom, particularly students with particular needs, with developmental needs, autistic needs, have often found home learning preferable to institutional learning. And we need to accept that while some of this change is frightening, change is always frightening, there are possibilities that can enhance and develop our offerings. So thank you for listening during this time. And whilst again, I will finish with the fact that it would have been lovely to bridge the gap physically to come to Indonesia, which I would still hope to do one day, it has been an opportunity to bridge that digitally. Again, on the back of the slide are references if you need them. Thank you very much for listening.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Hopkins. Great. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the presentation from Dr. Hopkins with the topic, Reflection on Curriculum Post-COVID. And now, let's continue to the session question and answer. For the session, I'd like to take 2 questions from the chat box. And the first question is by Ms. Nailu Rohmatika from PBS Universitas Negeri Semarang. And she asks, one of big education problems in Indonesia, especially in online learning, is the lack of ability of many old teachers or educators with more than 50 years old of ages to operate the smartphones or computers in learning. What solution Dr. Hopkins could give to overcome this? Okay.
Thank you for the question. I just turned 50, so I now have some sympathy. I think the first thing is not to underestimate the opportunity of older people to become used to and to utilize the technologies. But there will need to be time and professional development to allow people to change. But also, I think, an acceptance of an attitude to change. In fact, I find most teachers, both in universities and in schools, are very willing to learn new ideas. After all, most people who are teachers are also learners themselves. But I do think there needs to be time and slowness given to this change. And I don't think that we can assume that in 21, 22, there'll just be a new way of doing things. This has to be a longer term plan, and it may take 2, 3, 5, even 10 years before these possibilities become real.
Okay, great. So it's still possible for them to learn, right?
Very possible. Very possible.
Okay, thank you. And the second question is from Mr. Sugiarta SL from Indonesia. And the question is there a positive side that we can think of for early childhood education from pandemic, right? COVID-19.
In some ways, I think Sue may be a better person to answer this, as I'm not an expert in early child education. But there is a lot of evidence that whilst I think the youngest children, a face-to-face and a social space is probably more important than for older children, I think there are some opportunities for the use of technologies for the youngest children. But I think I would probably want younger children to be more in physical spaces. And again, I think this is where we need to think about education as much more varied in the future. The opportunities perhaps for kindergartens to be more social spaces in social learning. But as we get older children through into high school and universities, there's more opportunity for blended. But I do defer to more experts in early child education than myself.
So there is still a positive side of this, right? Even though, as we know that young children, especially in early childhood, they need a lot of physical contact with one another, right? Because they love to play.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. That's all the questions. And ladies and gentlemen, the quote that I could take from Dr. Hopkins is, in this pandemic era, where the physical contact has been very limited, there are still opportunities to succeed the education goals by promoting great virtual universities or schools, digital teachers, digital learners, and digital resources. Okay, and ladies and gentlemen, we have already finished the session question and answer for the second keynote speaker. Before we continue to the third keynote speaker, let's give a big applause for Dr. Hopkins.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hopkins. And for the next session, I will give it back to the Master of Ceremony, Ms. Alvin, who will introduce the next moderator for the third and the last keynote speakers. Ms. Alvin, the time is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Novistiasto, and thank you, Dr. Paul and Dr. Sue Chris Heber, that has been give us a meaningful presentation. And ladies and gentlemen, now we move to the second session of the second IGTV 2021 that will be led by Mrs. A.M. Munawarah MPD. But before that, I would like to read the curriculum vitae of Mrs. A.M. Munawarah MPD. Ms. A.M. Munawarah MPD is a lecturer in Guidance and Counseling Department. She has many publications. The recent one is about reading a book to enhance adolescent resilience in orphanage and social network site usage and fear of missing out of female Instagram user. She has the focus on the discussion is the practice model of counseling, social pathology, research studies, and andragogy. That is the curriculum vitae of Mrs. A.M. Munawarah MPD. Ms. A.M., the time is yours.
Thank you so much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is A. Munawarah, and I will be the moderator for second session. In this second session, we have two speakers. First is Prof. Jianzhong Zhenhong from Central China Normal University. And then second speaker, Dr. Siti Nuzulia, MSc from Faculty of Education, Universitas Negeri Semarang, Indonesia. Firstly, I would like to introduce the first speaker to you. This is the video of curriculum vitae of Professor Jianzhong Zhenhong from CCNU, China.
Professor Jianzhong is a professor in School of Psychology, Central China Normal University. Besides, he also teaches in School of Business and Lahti School of Innovation at Lappeenranta University of Technology, Finland, as Senior Lecturer of Knowledge Management. His recent research project is about principal researcher of sub-project of group impression assessment and its psychological mechanism of modern Chinese society. Key project led by Professor Binchuo. And principal researcher about research and application models of personalization in online video lectures. He has many publications. The recent one is about young children voices of happiness, learning from urban area in Indonesia, that published in Asia Pacific Journal of Research in Early Childhood, and about dynamic cognitive process of text-picture integration revealed by event-related potential brain research.
Ladies and gentlemen, in this international conference, Prof. Hong is going to present a topic entitled Online Learning and Collaboration Across Boundaries, Challenge and Implication for about 30 minutes. I would like to inform the participant you can ask question by write your question in chat room, and I will choose randomly the question to be asked to a presenter. Okay, I think Prof. Hong already joined with us. Good morning, Prof. Hong.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you.
Okay, how are you today?
Yeah, great. I'm looking forward to share something with you all from China.
Okay, if not pandemic, you will be here with us in Faculty of Education, Universitas Negeri Semarang. And actually, our faculty and CCNU have a good relation since about 4 of our faculty members are alumni or graduated from CCNU, and 2 of them is Ibu Yuli Kurniawati PhD and our Vice Dean, Bapak Farid Ahmadi PhD. So it's a great honor to, for us to having Prof. Hong here in this international conference. I think Prof. Hong ready with this with their presentation. Prof. Hong, time is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like to take the risk to try what I just learned. Halo, apa kabar semuanya? First, I would like to express my thanks for the invitation, and also thanks for session chairs. I'm honored here to give the presentation, and my presentation, as you can see, just a second. From the slide here. Okay, I'm as introduced, I'm Jianzhong Hong, Professor of Psychology and Knowledge Management from Central China Normal University, Wuhan, China. Briefly, I'm going to say something background, global transformation of higher education, and then I would like to share with you something we were conducting during pandemic, during the outbreak and early period of pandemic, and finally, I'm going to say something about challenges and implications based on what we were doing and based on something we were actually researching on. First part, as you can see, the virus spread widely and rapidly. Even today, there is a big increase, and our major task is still to fight with the virus. And in connection and consequently, we witnessed the transformation of higher education towards a hybrid learning. And in China, during the at the outbreak and early period, there is a popular official government slogan. Perhaps it's familiar to all of you. Classroom teaching stops, but learning continues. This mainly applied for February to April. Sorry, it's not this year, but last year. It's something wrong there. So during that period, especially in Wuhan, we try all schools try to conduct online learning. We think it's a necessary measure in the school over the country. Starting from the second semester, late August, early September last year, happily, all schools returned back to campus study till now. Here is a picture very popular during the online learning teaching early last year. As you can see, it's popular in the way of the whole country doing the online learning, online teaching, and online learning. For the CCNU, I'm working. I think we has no exception, and because our university, as our session chair introduced, some of your faculty member being here in Wuhan in CCNU, so you already get to know that what the situation, and we also had a previous experience in using educational technology. It's one of the leading university in the whole country. For instance, we have a cloud classroom, and for undergraduate students, we have over 5,000 courses just in this cloud classroom, which we developed by our university. And then continuously, actually, when we start online learning early
Excuse me, Prof. Hong?
Yes, sorry.
Your PowerPoint didn't appear in our screen.
Can you see the PowerPoint? Can you see?
No, I cannot see the PowerPoint.
Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry. Let me see. What is the problem? Probably I need to do something which I forgot to do. Sorry for that. Can you see now?
Yes, yes, it's clear now.
Oh, sorry. It's pity. Some nice photos. Okay, but it's okay. Shall I continue?
Yes,
Okay.
you may continue.
Okay, all right. Then school start to do preparation in a way, prepare for both teaching and learning. And during, at the very beginning of online teaching, we also had a lot of trainings. And the good thing for us is that we can do our teaching tasks quite independently and freely. And the last thing I like to say that we also sharing during the online learning. So that is a good thing to do, to attend the other colleagues' courses, because for many faculty members, online learning perhaps quite new still. And in addition to those, to what I said, we also tried to do a lot of creative types of collaboration and organization. For instance, online views of new graduate candidates, public events, and graduation ceremonies, they all put online during the first semester last year. And there are all big things, because we are not used to do, especially for those kind of school routines. And it's hard. And the second thing, because we are normal university, so it means basically we have the responsible for basic education, online teaching and learning for primary and middle schools. So actually, I remember that we really get together and we are trying to just focusing on the topic and publish the manuals for the society and etc. So during those period, I do think that it gives us a lot of opportunities for ourselves, also collaborating each other through internet. And also, because we are a normal university and we attached to the Ministry of Education, so we also have a responsibility for build and implement of a national psychological system platform. So that's also a big task during the pandemic period. And currently, I think this platform is still continues. And over 4,000 psychological counselors from all over the country joined the platform. And last thing I like to say, perhaps also we are encountering the practical issues like when the school was in a lockdown situation and graduate students, they cannot return back to the school. And we have to, teachers and other faculty members, we are packing and sending luggage to graduates in addition of online teaching and learning. So from this, you can see online teaching is definitely is a part and most important thing. While what impressed us also those creative types of collaboration and learning. Chinese and Indonesia studies, when we go to see what happened in literature and what has been studied, I found something interesting from the research papers. For instance, they are studying some in the Indonesia studied Indonesia's education readiness, and also we found some Chinese studies which covered over 300 universities and schools, and they also make a investigation for greater amount of teachers and students. We got something interesting. Well, what I like to say, it's those things are for Chinese case are more like afterwards, because we are now all Chinese students, all Chinese schools are returned back to normal, but during that period, it has been forced to conduct online teaching and learning. I saw the slide also from Paul. He mentioned in what happened in the UK. So I think during that time, we don't have any choice to all transmit. We have to do the preparation for transition of our teachers and students to online learning. And now I like to say a few words about small studies we conducted afterwards in connection with Chinese elementary and middle school children. So we send actually I think during after quite late stage of this first semester last year, and also afterwards we sent over 3,000 questionnaires to elementary school teachers and students, and also the parents. And this is an ongoing project, and we are still doing the analysis. And what I like to say here briefly, we found something quite same as our keynote speakers said previously. For instance, the live broadcast versus recorded broadcast, we had the question to try to get to know, and definitely, and the answer is that students liked much more live lectures rather than the recorded lectures. But there is some there is a more restriction during the pandemic period, because elementary school and middle school, they have a more tight schedules. They have to follow, follow the rules from administrative office, and they can't do, many times they can't do this live broadcast, for instance. But for university, we can decide what we do rather free. And also we have some other fundings here. For instance, if we are talking about elementary school pupils, so because they are home, studying in the home, so the supervision of teachers are quite weak, and the result is rather up to the supervision of parents. So those kind of small investigation, and I just like to share with you in order to get to know a little bit of the situation, what happened in Wuhan. Continuously and internationally, we also, my research team also conducted something in collaboration with my colleagues in UK and Japan. And for instance, one project we are focusing now is on the institutional ideological dilemma. And this is something we conducted by discourse analysis, and we interviewed several faculty members from university, from University of Bath, from Osaka University, and from CCNU. And actually, as our keynote speaker soon and proudly said already, so the challenges, many challenges, the challenges are just, you know, many times in contrasting of the face-to-face teaching and learning. I think briefly, I'd like to say something about these challenges and implications specifically in connection with our conference theme or seminar theme. For teaching challenges, I think the attitudes of the staff and quite an important, so are the strategies, methods, habits, they're all different. And I don't want to say in the detailed way, because I think the Paul's lecture, they have many, it tell us very, very detailed information. For instance, there are some new features of conducting the online teaching and learning. And for online teaching and learning, the preparation is very, very important. For instance, the design beforehand for the interaction is rather important, because that's why while we are conducting interviews, some teachers say it's like interaction, but the other says I would not see so much interactions if not conducting online learning. So I think it's very, very much depending on the preparations, what you are really want to students to do, and it's different from classroom teaching, right? Learning challenges, I think many, and for instance, from the studies in Indonesia, and from studies from China, and also from other nations, the self-disciplinary and learning autonomy of students are quite mentioned and emphasized, and the new ways of presentation, interactive communication, and also proper learning environment, because home are quite different from classroom, right? And what I like to say is about adaptability of student transition to online learning, because I think, as I said before, that maybe some students have a previous experience, but others not. So that matters a lot for this kind of acceptance, also because it's nature. If you have the previous experience and under circumstances, it's quite nature. And also I'm thinking this acceptance perhaps also related to something of culture, because in cultures, in the literature of cultural psychology, we can see people or students, teachers from some culture are quite easy to accept something new, but from other culture perhaps not, and etc. And also these conformity things, because for Chinese teachers and students' meaning. Most of us think, okay, we have to do, then we do it. But maybe people from Hong Kong are a little bit different. While I'm talking with my colleagues, they said, students from Hong Kong, they would rather say, why I have to, to do the things like online learning, and would that be possible if I postpone a bit one semester and to see the situation and etc. But the situation in different in UK, Australia, and United States, I guess also quite different. What students' attitude, whether they are willing to accept or they are really be forced to do the online learning. Because we talk a little, we already talk quite a lot by our keynote speakers, Sue and Pearl, talked very much about student, teachers, agencies, student engagement. I think that quite much influenced the results of online learning. The last thing I like to say, also related to Asian relationship-based culture, the significance of being together. I think for our students, definitely they prefer go to the campus to study if they can. And but because since I'm in Finland, so I think also culturally we noticed that whether you are focusing very much on the learning tasks or very much on the social relationships, or are they connected or are they isolated things? So I think they're quite different. And I think this is culture challenge as well. Lastly, I'd like to say implications, several points. And first, I'm thinking that online reflections of online teaching and learning give us a lot of thoughts and reflections. So the question is, would it be necessary to do everything in a conventional way? So I think a new distribution of learning resources across the boundary of schooling, and how do we understand the schooling? Are we really thinking the schooling is just a group of people sitting in the classroom and etc.? So I think this is the first thing, first implication, and we were talking among the colleagues. The second issue is about the study of interperson interaction, because it looks like whether we are conducting online or offline teaching and learning, we think interaction is something good. More interaction, the better. Is it so? So I'm thinking that especially during this online teaching and learning, we found that actually something different. Interaction has a purpose, right? Purpose interaction, because we have to accomplish the learning task very well, and we are sitting together because perhaps for the building or construction of the social relationships, or maybe I interacted with others because something new on technology. I don't understand very much of technology, the tools. So I would rather to ask a question. So this is something like if I can get an answer or not. If I don't get any answer, or if I can get the answer timely, so this kind of support. support for the online learning is a very, very essential thing. So therefore, I'm thinking that perhaps in the future, while we are studying, it would be nice that we can really see what kind of interaction we are doing, and also is it so that we do the better, we do more, the more is the better. For many reasons, we can't do more. For instance, we are here, we are learning for the learning tasks. We are not learning for making friends. So, but they are also important. So this kind of a balance, if you say, balance also a good word, perhaps. The last thing I like to say is the types of courses and the content for learning. What would be the best and what would be not for online teaching and learning? Because knowledge we are learning in the school are quite different. The skills we learned also different. Are we really acquire the knowledge acquiring knowledge is a focus, or actually we are thinking that problem solving, especially creative types of problem solving, is essential. So therefore, it also raised up these kind of questions for our future opportunities to prepare for our students for the society. Because, you know, what we learned in the school, would that really be useful, and in what way they are useful for the workplaces, etc. So thank you very much. My presentation is here, and welcome you the questions, because I don't know if I said everything clearly. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Hong, for great presentation related to challenge and implication in online learning and collaboration across boundaries. And I captured some important point from your presentation, that we should establish strong collaboration to deal with learning and teaching challenge, and also strengthen self-disciplinary and learning autonomy on students during pandemic COVID-19. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the presentation from Professor Hong. Now let's continue to session question and answer. Prof. Hong, you seem you got a lot of questions, but I will choose randomly 2 or 3 questions. First question is from Ani Pujiastuti, President University. Hello, Ani. I hope you still join with us. The question is, since Prof. Hong mentioned about supervision of a parent, what is your suggestion for the institution in educating parents so that they can better assist their children during learning process? It's interesting question. Yeah? Is every parent's problem to assist their children during online learning?
Yes, thank you. I think it's a hard question, which I don't have answer. And but it's a reality also during, particularly during the pandemic period, and particularly for the younger children, and because they, you know, they are studying home, and the results are quite different while they are returning back to the schools. Some are very good, and some are really very poor. And I don't know, because parents, they you know, we need the supervision from parents, but parents also has their own work, and also parents has their own specific situation. So I'm thinking this is a problem we found, and I think I don't know. Sorry.
Thank you, Prof. Hong. And for second question from Grace Aprilia, she didn't mention her institution. What obstacles of learning process in China during the pandemic, especially for higher education, and how to overcome it?
Sorry, what is the question? Okay, yeah.
The obstacle of learning process during a pandemic, especially in higher education.
I'm sorry, I can't follow you.
Okay.
What you mean what kind of process?
Yeah, the obstacle of learning process, like
obstacles.
difficulties. Yes, yes.
Obstacles. All right. Thank you very much. Now I got to the point. Yeah. You mean we have many because I think what we are thinking that you know people some teachers actually after the pandemic period, they liked very much about online learning, and because actually we during this kind of doing, we are learning actually. We are becoming from the unfamiliar to familiar. We're from novice to experts in a way. We know what the internet and technology can do for us. Therefore, something we cannot actually do if without this technology. And so this is, I think, something positive, right? But for maybe for some other teachers, this kind of uncertain feelings and also the evaluation, evaluation of student performance, if you really cared about student performance. Because, okay, if we are all together and we accomplished one course and we accomplished timely, and we are happy, teachers are happy, students are happy, but so what? So if we are coming back to the outcome, learning outcomes, and actually in what way we are able to evaluate, because we have experience in doing in the traditional way, but definitely we can also assign many tasks for invite students to accomplish and to evaluate. But also in our system, we have many examinations. But how do you know that this examination has been really accomplished by students themselves, or in what way they really, So I think something maybe are easy to evaluate, and maybe, for instance, open question, the task, some tasks, it's open, because we invite you to consult all sources wherever available, internet, no problem. Your parents' friend, and your friend, your classmates, no problem. But something, I don't know if this is really a challenge, because something, and some teachers really don't like the question, this kind of question. They like a so-called scientific question, objective way of evaluation. So I think this is one of the biggest issue we are encountering, and optical, if you say optical. So I think one of the major obstacles for evaluation, the outcomes of learning.
Thank you, Prof. Hong.
Thank you.
I hope it answered Aprilia question related to difficulties in conducting online learning in China. And Prof. Hong said that evaluation is one of big issue faced in China, but I agree that not only happen in China, but also in Indonesia. Okay, Prof. Hong, I think I still have one question for you, since there are a lot of questions for you actually. This is the last question. The question is, I noticed that last September 2020, all schools returned to campus, especially in China. Do you see any challenge for reopening school after a year of closing? If it does, so how China overcome this challenge?
Okay, thank you for the nice question. Because I think we are, when I talk with my international colleagues, we also noticed that we are rather optimistic, optimistic for the online learning, online teaching, because we have a choice now. We could do online teaching. Well, we also can do traditional types. So I think in this way, the term we used a lot already, this blended learning, actually becoming more and more, and our teachers really try to do so. And one of my colleagues also actually, I invited her to give a speech to my, give a lecture to my course. And she said, would it be possible I just give it online? I said, why not? Because it's possible. And we could do, we could do in the classroom, and you could deliver your lecture through internet. Well, it's also possible for this kind of discussion, question and answer. So why not? I think in a way, we are also try to summarize the experience during this pandemic period, and we are trying to use the best part, if we can, to the this kind of offline learning. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Prof. Hong, actually that's the last question, but I got special question from Dr. Paul Hopkins, our previous speakers. Can you, do you want to answer this question? It seems that you have a lot of fans, yeah.
Yes, if time allows, or otherwise I could communicate with Paul afterwards.
Okay, so it's still one question?
Yeah.
Okay.
What is the question?
The question is from Dr. Paul Hopkins, University of Hull. Yeah. How does what we have learned over lockdown change the purpose of school or universities?
Yeah. What is the question? Sorry.
Okay. The question is, how does what we have learned over lockdown change the purpose of schools or universities?
What is the question?
Okay, how learning from lockdown, we have lockdown for a long time.
Yes, for at least one semester in Wuhan, yes.
Yes, change the purpose of schools or universities.
What has been changed? What is the
purpose?
What is purpose?
Okay, I will. Can you hear my voice clearly?
Yes, very
okay.
well.
Okay. The question is, how does what we have learned over lockdown change the purpose of schools or universities?
Do you mean the purpose?
Yes.
Ah, okay. All right. So, I think the lockdown period relatively short and temporary. So I mean, for the series, for the city of Wuhan, it's the most serious, and the lockdown, the period for lockdown is a whole semester. But actually, very soon we are among the earliest university to open to the students again, welcome them to return back to the campus. So in that way, I think students and teachers have a positive feeling, rather positive feelings for for the time being, and of course we are still be very cautious, and the main task I think maybe has been a little bit changed, because from the very beginning during the pandemic period, protection and controlling of the virus is a major task. So the quality and the way of doing online teaching are almost like in teachers' hands. So it means we are focusing the focus now, changing more to the focusing on the what we learned through this period, lockdown period, and what we are able to do in currently and in near future. So those kind of issue become more and more important, because the major task I think also returned back. I'm happy for that.
Thank you, Prof. Hong, for the answer. I think no more question for Prof. Hong. Yeah, actually we have another question, but because the limitation of time, so I will stop the Q&A session. Thank you, Prof. Hong, for your sharing experience about learning online, especially in Wuhan, China. So before we are close this session, can you, all of you give a virtual applause for Prof. Hong?
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Prof. Hong. Ladies and gentlemen, we have already finished the session question and answer for the first keynote speaker. We already give big applause, yeah. But Prof. Hong, can you say about last statement about learning online during pandemic? Maybe short statement from you.
Sorry.
Okay, maybe you want to say last statement related to your topic about learning, online learning.
Online learning. You mean the final word?
Yes, yes, exactly.
Something like a final word. Okay. I think it's wonderful that really I see so many people are interested in the topic, like education and human technology, and like we have seen here today. And in China, actually, we are also talking very much about like AI, and we are talking about Spock, the Chinese version. I mean Spock compared with MOOC. So Chinese people are more comes to this Spock in a way because we are university, and because we are we have strong sense of this more strong sense of a community. So it looks like things has been start to be more and more comes to this kind of new learning environment. So I think this is one thing I like to say. The last thing I like to say, because it's an international seminar, so I do notice that culture is one of the very important elements in understanding of this online learning, in doing well this online learning, etc. And also, if we try to explore the education and human technology, so I do believe it's one of the key issues should be considered. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. Hong. I believe that Prof. Hong material is very interesting since we deal with same problem related to online learning. Thank you, Prof. Hong. Ladies and gentlemen, now it's time for another great keynote speaker. It's special speaker from Faculty of Education Universitas Negeri Semarang, Indonesia, Dr. Siti Nuzulia, MSI. This the video of CV of Dr. Siti Nuzulia, MSI.
Siti Nuzulia, MSc PhD, is a lecturer in Department Psychology, Faculty of Education, Universitas Negeri Semarang. She graduated from doctoral degree in University of Hull, United Kingdom, with dissertation about the dark triad, personality traits and positive occupational outcomes in Indonesia collectivistic cultures. She has many publications. The recent one, her publication is about the dark triad, personality traits and positive occupational outcomes in Indonesia collectivistic cultures. And the other publication with the title The Socio-Demographic Context of Observed Solitary and Social Smoking Behaviors Using a Behavioral Ecological Approach. That is the curriculum vitae of Siti Nuzulia, PhD.
Okay, and Ibu Dr. Siti Nuzulia is with us here in Faculty of Education, and she just graduated from University of Hull, United Kingdom. And I proudly announce that in 2020, she obtained a prestigious award from Deputi Bidang Penguatan Riset dan Pengembangan Kementerian Riset dan Teknologi atau Badan Riset dan Inovasi Nasional, penerimaan penghargaan kategori artikel ilmiah berkualitas tinggi bidang kesehatan dan obat tahun 2020. Sangat membanggakan sekali ya, terutama bagi kami Fakultas Ilmu Pendidikan Universitas Negeri Semarang. Ladies and gentlemen, in this international conference, Dr. Siti Nuzulia is going to present a topic entitled Stress and Well-Being During Online Learning in COVID-19 Pandemic. It will be very interesting topic, yeah, since a lot of students complain to me, ma'am, I feel stressed because of learning, online learning. So Ibu Nuzulia will discuss it further, and I remind you the participant could ask question in chat room, and I will randomly choose the question. Assalamualaikum Bu Nuzulia.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
How are you today?
I'm a little bit nervous.
Little bit nervous ya.
Yeah.
Oke. Sudah siap nampaknya Bu Nuzulia. Ini face to face lebih mantap ya Bu ya.
Iya.
Oke, bolehlah tepuk tangan ya sekali lagi secara virtual maupun langsung. Monggo Bu Nuzulia dipersilahkan.
Thank you for the time, Bu Em. It is an honor for me to speak at the same venue with Professor Sue Chris Heber from Lathrop University, and then Dr. Paul Hopkins from University of Hull, and Professor Jianzheng Hong from Central China Normal University. And in today's occasion, I will present my paper, Stress and Well-Being During Online Learning in the COVID-19 Pandemic. I will start the discussion today with a story, my own story. I have two children. One is 12 years old and the other is 16 years old. When I heard that the government announced that the children must study from home, and I, as an employee, must work from home, I feel released. It means that I can spend more of my time with my family. But I was also afraid of the COVID-19 pandemic. However, what I imagined about the joy of work and school from home became a disaster. Every morning, I must argue with my youngest son, who is in year 7, to wake him up earlier and push him to go to school, which is only to step in front of his bed because the computer is in his room. It happens from the beginning of lockdown until today, this morning. When he finally sits down in front of his virtual class, he doesn't pay attention to the lesson and plays an online game at the same time. I must supervise him all day to make sure he engages with his virtual classroom, and also I must substitute the teacher function because the teacher only asks him to read the textbook and collect assignment without proper explanation. When I came to his school to meet his teacher about his case, the teacher said that most students have less involvement in the online class during the pandemic. The teacher also said that she feels so stressed because she must change the way to teach, because she must conduct an online class with lacking internet connection and internet quota limitation of her students. After all, the students came from various social and economic backgrounds, which is not all of the students able to pay for internet or mobile phone data. But my youngest son's case didn't happen to my first son, who is in year 11. He, with his awareness, go to his online school on time, sit down in front of his computer and focus all of the time during the lesson. No playing the online game, no chatting with his friends, and do his tasks on time without procrastination. He just said that he feels bored, overwhelmed with his school tasks, and lonely, and often demotivated to do the same thing every day without direct interaction with people. I believe that my story also happens to other parents in the entire world. I think that my sons are not the only ones who are unmotivated, bored, overwhelmed, and lonely during online class. More than 68.8 million students in this country study at home and might have the same problem. And 4.2 million teachers and lecturers who teach from home also feel stressed because they must cope with a new teaching method. So there are 3 parties involved, and they all have their respective problems during online learning in the COVID-19 pandemic period: parents, students, and teachers. Let's start with the parents. COVID-19 is undoubtedly placing a considerable toll on parents. With class suspension, the educational responsibilities of parents have become even more crucial, with many likely faced with competing demands, especially for parents whose children are still in the early stage of education. Stay-at-home parents have to adapt to new routines at home, in which they have to deal with the demands of distance learning while also performing different household responsibilities. Parents who work outside of their homes have to arrange childcare and offer support to their children's distance learning while simultaneously working from home or in the office. Without proper training and preparation, parents will naturally encounter many difficulties problems in the process. According to the American Psychological Association, or APA's annual Stress 2020 in America report, with many saying that working from home while coordinating the children's online learning is causing a significant amount of stress. According to this year's report, American parents are, on average, feeling significantly higher levels of stress than adults without children. The disruption of the lives of children and teens under the age of 18 caused by COVID-19 may be having a profound effect on the stress levels of parents. The report states that 71% say managing online learning for their children is a significant source of stress. Parents also mention how they have had to take care of homework more than ever, including explaining worksheets and other tasks. On screen, students sometimes shy away from asking questions, or internet lag disallows asking questions, leading to all queries being diverted at parents, some of whom have their own work to complete from. Previous research has also suggested that increased parenting stress, which is often created when a parent perceives a lack of ability to meet the demand of parenting, can lead to poorer parental outcomes and may in turn constrain the parent-child relationships. A recent study found that parents who reported higher level of difficulties in supporting children's learning than before the pandemic were found to be more stressed. When parents think that their children's learning is manageable and that they are satisfied with the learning offered by school, their parenting stress is decreased and the quantity and quality of their parental involvement are increased. On students' side, some studies note that students struggle to self-manage. They feel that they had too much freedom. The students had no one looking over what they actually work and what was required. Some recognized that lack of time management affected their motivation and learning and attributed this to not having the routine of school, like getting up early, having bell times, and specified breaks. Other students linked their lack of self-management with a perceived increase in workload, with teachers setting more than they would to have done at school, and a lack of coordination among subjects. From the summary of several studies, during COVID-19 pandemic, most students report that they prefer to be in a real classroom rather than in a virtual class. The spontaneity of the classroom was preferred because school enables causal conversation about schoolwork and to bounce ideas around. Collaborating on online platforms like Zoom or Google Meet felt unnatural because only one person could talk and teachers dominated. Most of students turn off videos and microphones and doesn't participate. Students tend to not speak or be mute or show their face, therefore it was hard to communicate or interact with others. And some students simply didn't attend. When asked about the hardest part of learning at home, researchers note motivation. This lack of motivation was linked to contextual issues, which included family obligation. For example, the student must looking after sibling or helping out the parents at home. Distraction like YouTube, online games, Netflix, social media, chatting with friends online, or online shopping. Also, inaccessibility of teacher or peer help, for example, the lack of extrinsic consequences and the lack of distinction between home and school. For some, the hardest part of working from home was finding the motivation to do schoolwork during the uncertainty of the state of world. Without the extrinsic drivers of school, routine, consequences, resources, and easy access to teacher and peer support, many students reported being unable to find the intrinsic motivation to study. The predominant motivating or demotivating factor of technology was its use in gaining support through communicating with teachers, and some students reported feeling uncomfortable asking questions in front of a class on Zoom or through email or in a call. They were demotivated when there was a delay in a teacher response, and sometimes it seems too much effort to ask the question than wait for a reply. In Indonesia, the problem caused by learning online become more complex. A research report which involves 1,131 high school students or SMA students from several provinces in Indonesia suggested that 70.29% of participants feel stressed because of learning tasks during learning in the COVID-19 pandemic. It appears that during the COVID-19 pandemic, online learning has become disoriented. The Indonesian Child Protection Commission or Komisi Perlindungan Anak Indonesia even received some complaints from students' parents that their children are stressed because of various assignments from the teacher during the home study program. Most likely, the teacher understands that home learning is only by giving assignments online, and the collection is also online. All subject teachers give assignments that require a lot of time to complete. Students reported being overwhelmed or not having time management skills to independently work through their tasks. As a result, students become psychologically exhausted. Furthermore, inadequate Wi-Fi, internet data limitation, or inaccessible apps are also burdensome in Indonesia online education during the pandemic. Indonesia's geographic area, which is huge and diverse, make it difficult for some parts of Indonesia to be reached by the internet network. I have even read in the newspapers that some students need to climb up to the roof of their houses every day just to get a signal to study. From teachers' perspectives, some studies note that virtual learning environment with no face-to-face engagement is a challenge. The real purpose of learning from home is to provide regular learning activities for students to stay accustomed to learning and maintaining regularity, and working on virtual classroom is not much different from the real classroom. However, this condition causes the potential increase of job stress on teachers. Time allowance for reading and writing within online discussion is often underestimated, and written explanation can take much more time than speech. Learning new technologies and how to interact through them can cause oppressive pressure, while concurrently mentoring and supporting students new to the online environment. Some research recognized that academic staff were more likely to become disengaged when overloaded, as exhaustion can lead to a distancing of themselves emotionally and cognitively from their work, and to become less responsive to the needs of other people or the demands of the task. This situation can lead to burnout, having a devastating impact on the health and well-being of academics. No wonder, according to a research, most teachers were satisfied with the education system before the pandemic, and also during the pandemic situation, teachers' well-being and job satisfaction in relation to the profession decreased significantly. I'm not saying that online learning is bad. It is understandable that this wave of innovation in learning is not always convenient for parents, students, and teachers, especially given the fact that the transition has been abrupt rather than gradual. So, what is the implication? Some research suggests that a wide range of support from school practices to work and government policies was highly rated by parents as useful in supporting their families. Thus, parent stress can be reduced when they are provided with better support to guide the child's learning. Previous studies have also described that families who report a lack of support from their social network and community have increased parental stress, and that greater parental support and perceived control during the pandemic can serve as a protective factor against perceived stress and negative parenting during the pandemic. These findings suggest that providing parental support and increasing their perceived control may be effective intervention strategies to reduce parental stress during COVID-19 pandemic. Moreover, schools and teachers must provide more manageable tasks during distance learning and provide a learning process which has the same quality as face-to-face classes. The quality of online learning that is not much different from face-to-face learning is expected to not only reduce the parent stress in accompanying children's learning process during online classes, but will also reduce student stress, boredom, and unmotivated during distance learning. The teachers then are the first person who has responsibilities to conduct or manage a good class for the students. Online teachers must employ skills innovatively in a range of collaborative practices in order to maintain an environment of positive student engagement. These skills include creating a sense of community and belonging, communicating care and sensitivity, and tailoring feedback or feed-forward to match students' need. Along with supporting students socially, the online teacher must create a community of inquiry, the integration of cognitive, social, and teaching present. They must provide positive, high-quality feedback, feed-forward, offering clear guidance for development, facilitation of discussion, enhancing motivation, and fostering encouragement. If the teachers able to apply all of these strategies, distance learning not only increase student motivation, but also could assist young children in engaging collaborative learning, problem-solving activities, and understanding abstract concepts. Online education also then able to encourage independent learning and builds accountability of students. Students can gain more control over their learning and have more to say on what they wish to learn through the feedback system. However, all of this could only be achieved with a substantiated support from the governing body, such as the school or the government. For example, the government must involve and should also collaborate with universities and schools to provide guidance for parents. For example, parenting courses on how to educate children during online learning, as no doubt that parents are also involved in the process. The government should also could provide adequate resources such as reliable and evenly distributed internet connection, affordable or maybe free internet for the lower classes, and free peripherals such as laptops and tablets for those who lack them. The government must also take into consideration the scope of curriculum during online learning. For instance, the government could set a national standard to trim the number of topics required for the exam to alleviate the burden from both the teachers in preparing the lessons and students in their day-to-day online learning. The curriculum should also incorporate physical and psychosocial components rather than only focusing on the academic components. For the academia, this comes as an opportunity to evaluate the effectiveness of different educational approaches and develop their own hybrid model of teaching and learning suited to specific and educational needs. Input from students, parents, and teachers should be sought to create a learning environment that benefits everyone. The above-mentioned strategies will cause disruptive innovation in the education delivery system in the long term, which will further require feasibility testing, quality control, and regulation. Thus, the government should establish regulating bodies to keep a check. Similarly, adjustments to the current educational budget should be made to incorporate such educational reforms in the time of emergency. Thank you for listening. I give the time back to Ms. A.M.
Thank you, Ibu Nuzulia. I catch some point about her presentation. She explained that stress not only happens to students, right, but teacher, parents also feel the same challenge to deal with online learning. Yeah? Students have several problems related to self-management, motivation, and yeah, related, and also stress. And also teacher or lecturer have problem in time management. We feel that we have no enough time to learn and to write during this online class. One of the solutions proposed by Dr. Nuzulia is a good collaboration between parent, teacher, and government to overcome challenge in online learning. Ladies and gentlemen, that was presentation from Dr. Nuzulia. Now let's continue to the session question and answer. As I mentioned or announced before, that you can write your question in your chat room and I will directly and randomly pick the question. I already get one question from the participant. The question is, Dr. Nuzulia, you have explained previously that teachers must create an inquiry community in online class to increase student participation during online learning. Would you please explain to me, more and deeper what is inquiry community?
Okay. The inquiry community is a framework that highlights three core elements: cognitive present, social present, and teaching present. The inquiry community is used to create a meaningful educational experience. And these three of social, cognitive, and teaching presence are interdependent. Social presence is the ability of participants to identify with the community, communicate purposefully in a trusting environment, and develop interpersonal relationship by way of projecting their individual personalities. Cognitive presence is the extent to which learners are able to construct and confirm meaning through sustained reflection and discourse in a critical community of inquiry. And teaching presence is the design that facilitates cognitive and social processes for the purpose of realizing personally meaningful and educationally worthwhile learning outcomes. The inquiry community framework assumes that effective online learning, particularly higher order learning, is dependent on the development of a community. In an online learning environment, specific features of technology should be built to facilitate social, cognitive, and teaching present. It should be an online system that facilitates students create and upload biographies that can be viewed by other students and the teacher. This feature helps to support the social present. Teachers can upload lessons, instructions, videos, and activities into the system, thus making possible the teaching presence. Online discussion forum are another feature which should exist in an online learning system. Then online discussion forums are used as a best practice pedagogical technique to encourage student interaction and community. Yeah, I think that's my answer.
Thank you, Ibu Nuzulia. We have second question from Ani Pujiasuti, President University. Hello, Ani Pujiasuti. Thank you for stay tuned until the end of the international conference. Ibu Nuzulia, thanks for wonderful insight. Thinking about a professional development program for faculties, teachers, or lecturers, what type of program should we prioritize to better accommodate educators during or post-global pandemic? Thank you.
That's quite a hard question, because it should need a deep thinking before answering that question. What's the programs we need to build a new education system post pandemic situation? I think here the government need to first to standardize the system of education itself, especially about online learning system, which is nowadays the schools just independently run their own program without supervision from the government. So me as a lecturer, I just want to ask for the government and all of the academics to collaborate together to build like a community to dig deeper what happened during the lockdown period, during the student work at home and teacher or lecturer work from home. What is the strength or weaknesses from the 1 year period of the lockdown and online learning? And then after that, after we identified the problems, the root of the problem, we can then manage to create together with not only government but also schools and also parents, sit together to discuss about what next, what we need actually to improve the quality of online learning post-pandemic. Because I think after the pandemic, post-pandemic, online learning still continued, still be something that maybe some of lecturer or teacher feels more comfortable of the online learning system nowadays. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nuzulia. I think there's no more question for Dr. Nuzulia. With the second question end for fourth session, actually, it means that the second session has ended. Thank you so much, Dr. Nuzulia, for joining us today. You can say about your last word about our last statement related to stress and well-being student during online learning, Dr. Nuzulia?
Last word. Students do not learn much just sitting in classes, listening to teachers, memorizing prepackaged assignments, and spitting out answers. They must talk about what they are learning, write reflectively, and relate it to past experience, and apply it to their daily lives. They must make what they learn part of themselves. And e-learning doesn't just happen. it requires careful planning and implementation. So what happened to us today is like a shocking for us, for the entire world. And I believe that all of the countries never ready for the challenging situation like this.
Terima kasih Ibu Dr. Nuzulia. Mari kita beri tepuk tangan yang meriah untuk Ibu Dr. Nuzulia, presenter kita yang terakhir. Ladies and gentlemen, session 2 mainly talk about learning during pandemic during pandemic era, and also identify their problem. I can make a conclusion from 2 speakers that we need to build a collaboration worldwide to deal with same problem, aware of the problem and actively looking for the solution. Ladies and gentlemen, finally we come to end of presenting and discussion. By the completion of this discussion, I hope that all of you have gained insightful and enlightening experience. Thank you so much for stay tuned during this international conference. Enjoy your day and see you. Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much for Ms. E.M. Munawarah MPD. And ladies and gentlemen, that is the second session of the second ICHT 2021. Thank you for Professor Chan Jong-hong from CCNU China and Dr. Siti Nuzulia PhD from Faculty of Education, Universitas Negeri Semarang. Ladies and gentlemen, and after this, we will have a break session until 12:40. But before that, and after that, we will continue with panel presentation that will be led by the panel moderators. And for the presenters, please join the break room that have been decided by the committee. And for the participants that still join with us, I hope you're not leave the meeting, the Zoom meeting and YouTube, because you can join and choose which one of the break rooms that available. And thank you very much for your attention. See you in the next session. Bapak dan Ibu para panitia yang telah hadir di gedung dekanat lantai 3, dimohon silakan Bapak dan Ibu touch up terlebih dahulu. Lipstiknya, bedak dan lain sebagainya. Pak Denny, Pak Denny kayaknya di belakang aja Pak, kepanjangan. Devina nanti di belakang. Ya nanti saya dekat Bu Lia. Ayo.